Thank you. Please stand by. You will now be placed into conference.
Continuum. My name is Shane Jacques, and I'm an education specialist with the National FFA Organization. For the last 9 years, I've served state officer programs in various capacities, and I'm excited to share with you a little bit today about the future changes coming to the State Officer Leadership Continuum. Before we continue, I'd like to emphasize that no changes are coming for the 2017 conference season. All of the changes which we outline in this presentation will take effect with the 2018-2019 State FFA Officers. With that, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Austin Large.
Hello, my name is Austin Large, and I too am an education specialist at the National FFA Organization working on state officer programs. Specifically, I focus on the National Leadership Conference for State Officers, as well as the National FFA Delegate Experience. I'm going to be transitioning to a new role with the Texas FFA Association soon. However, I'm excited to share with you the changes that we have coming to the State Officer Leadership Continuum. The revision to the State Officer Leadership Continuum began in December of 2011 with the first phase of this process that we're calling model revision. The objectives for this first phase were that stakeholders will make recommendations regarding the enhancement of the State Officer Leadership Continuum, including the definition of continuum objectives and the establishment of an educational framework. We also wanted stakeholders to evaluate the me, we, do, serve model and make recommendations for improvement. During our time with that working group, stakeholders recommended that the National FFA staff conduct a nationwide needs assessment to identify the essential skills required of National FFA programming. Additionally, stakeholders recommended that the me, we, do, serve model be replaced by a cyclical model that views learning as a process launched by events and enriched by continued resources and reflective assessment. After that working group in 2011, we moved into phase 2, which was the needs assessment, which happened between February and May of 2012. During this time, National FFA was to build consensus among state officers and state staff to identify critical priorities when training and developing state FFA officers. The outcomes of that work were that a panel of 1 state officer and 1 state staff from 51 state associations identified 11 focus areas for a new leadership development continuum. Phase 3, which was standards development and validation, happened between July and September of 2014. During this time, National FFA staff was to engage a learning solutions design firm to create a series of standards at varying levels of mastery for each of the 11 focus areas. Those standards would be reviewed and validated by organization stakeholders. The outcomes of Phase 3 were that Vivaic, a Nebraska-based learning solutions design firm, created a series of standards called measures of success that represent 3 levels of mastery. A cohort of 11 stakeholders representing agricultural education and the industry of agriculture reviewed, enriched, and validated the measures of success. Finally, this cohort recommended that National FFA staff implement a blended learning model pioneered by the Center for Creative Leadership. Phase 4 of this process was what we're calling builders identification. From February to June of 2015, National FFA staff was to identify quantifiable behaviors to serve as guideposts for state officers and state staff to assess mastery in each of the measures of success. Additionally, National FFA staff was to validate their work using representatives of the Phase 3 cohort. The outcomes of that phase were that a set of 2 to 5 behaviors called builders were identified for each measure of success. Builders served to demonstrate mastery among the 3 levels developed in Phase 3. Finally, these builders were reviewed and validated by stakeholders. Phase 5, which was objective alignment, happened in March of 2016. The outcomes for this phase were that the objectives for this phase were that National FFA staff in collaboration with Vivaic will engage agricultural education stakeholders in constructing a framework for the delivery of the 11 focus areas. Additionally, at the recommendation of the Phase 1 and Phase 3 cohorts, the framework will involve both a cyclical learning model and a blended learning model approach. The outcome of that March working group were that stakeholders recommended a model that allowed for the delivery of all 11 focus areas among a series of events timed to the individual needs of each state association. Finally, this new model uses face-to-face instructor-led training experiences as events that are sandwiched by reflective, self-guided experiences called primers and boosters, which represents that cyclical model of development from phase 1, while emphasizing experiential learning as 70% of a state officer's development, which represents the blending learning model from phase 3. The graphic that's appearing on your screen now is the new State Officer Leadership Continuum. Before we take a look at each of the components of this new continuum, we want to point out a few things that you're probably not seeing on this graphic. First, you'll notice that the delegate process is absent. Note that the delegate process will continue to exist in its current form as mandated by the National FFA Organization's Constitution. 2 students will engage in pre-work for the delegate process, and then delegates will be allocated based on a state's percentage of total membership later this summer. In 2018, when this new continuum is rolled out, there will be no changes to how the delegate process operates. Additionally, some other enrichment experiences that have been a part of the State Officer Continuum that aren't represented here are the International Leadership Seminar for State Officers, Convention Enrichment Experiences, the State Officer Resource Center, and the Bright Ideas Magazine. Know that these enrichment experiences will continue to exist as they have in the past. They're just not represented on this graphic because they don't tie into that blended model of instruction, nor do they meet those 11 focus areas, so they're not truly a part of this new continuum. Also, you'll notice that there are some programs that are absent from this graphic. You don't see Blastoff, NLCSO, or State President's Conference as they currently exist. Know that we were charged with blowing this continuum up and starting from the ground up with a new model for developing state officers. And because of that, we found that these programs were not effective in serving all of our students in their whole development as a person. With that being said, we are excited to share with you this new continuum and talk about some of the features and benefits of its implementation. You'll notice in the middle of the screen there's a yellow bar. That tracks a student's development from election to retirement. There are 4 red circles in that bar that represent 4 distinct training experiences that happen for each student during a set time in their state officer year. Those 4 experiences are a kickoff event that will happen within 30 days of their election. This experience allows for students to understand their new position of influence and to gain some fundamental skills necessary to find success as a state officer. The next set event on that timeline is a DC conference for all state officers. This will happen in Washington, D.C., and will focus on advocacy and key messaging. You'll notice that all state officers are invited to participate in this event, and much like State President's Conference in the past, it will take place in late summer, so you can expect probably the last week of July. The next event on that continuum are convention enrichment sessions, and these are a set of face-to-face boosters for content that has already been delivered during the continuum. This will take the place of current convention enrichment experiences, and have no fear, it won't conflict with delegate experience needs. The final piece of these set experiences is a capstone, which is new to this continuum. This capstone will provide support for successful transition outside of state office. Sometimes we know our students have difficulty transitioning back into real life, and this capstone experience will help make that transition smooth, as well as help them place the experience of being a state officer in context outside of the blue jacket. Below that yellow line, there are some in-state electives and learning primers and boosters. These aren't tied to a specific point in that continuum because these provide the flexibility that this new continuum offers. These in-state electives focus on skill-based focus areas and are able to be plotted in your state officer's year when it's relevant to them. An example may be if you don't do formal keynote speeches until later in the spring, maybe leading up to your convention, typically that module has only been offered during Blastoff, which happens at the beginning of a state officer's year. In this new continuum model, you would be able to place that public speaking training at a point when it's really relevant for your students so that they can immediately apply that training in context of their responsibilities. The final portion of this continuum are learning primers and boosters. These are provided throughout the continuum, and they can range from videos and online learning modules to assessments and self-guided reflection questions, and they help to grease the skids for an experience that's coming up and then reinforce the content taught at that experience as a student moves through the rest of the continuum. Again, we were challenged to rethink the way that we develop state officers, and we are confident that this new continuum will help us to do so. Shane will help us understand each component of this new continuum a little bit deeper and talk to us about where we're headed next.
Thanks, Austin. So as we move beyond that 30,000-foot view, let's take a deeper dive into each of these experiences. We'll begin with the kickoff. This is a 3-day experience hosted in each one of your state associations. We're operating under the premise that 8 hours of content is the maximum a student can handle per day, and this experience hovers right around 24 hours of content. So this is 3 full days for the kickoff event. As Austin mentioned, ideally it's hosted within 30 days of your state officer's election. The work group who helped design this experience felt pretty strongly that the skills attained and acquired here are essential to your state officers leaving the starting gate as they begin their year of service. And so within 30 days, state officers should experience this kickoff event. Much like the current blast-off program, there is a ratio of 1 facilitator to 1 team. We want this to be a small, intimate setting that's very customized and very specific to the needs of your state. We want our facilitators to be able to build rapport quickly and be able to coach your state officers. And so for that to happen, we need a very small student-to-facilitator ratio, and that's achieved through this kickoff event. Facilitators will enroll your state officers in their FFA.org profiles and the State Officer Learning Management System, which enables us to deliver the primers and boosters. Because that learning management system uses single sign-on technology with FFA.org, it's essential that each of your state officers have access to their FFA.org profile and be designated within your state's roster as a state officer. We know that this has been a bear for you in years past in getting students to complete their FFA.org profile. So beginning in 2018, your only responsibility will be to designate them as a state officer. Once you've done that, your kickoff facilitator will help them complete their FFA.org profiles, ensure that they can log into FFA.org, and then subsequently log into the State Officer Learning Management System. The focus areas that will be covered in this kickoff event include sound character, influence through positive actions, professionalism, and time management. In terms of the InState experiences that Austin mentioned, there is some flexibility here. We have a maximum of 2 InState experiences allowed per state in addition to the kickoff. This means that we'll send a National FFA facilitator to your state up to 3 times, once for the kickoff and then potentially 2 additional times for those 2 in-state experiences. Where the flexibility comes into play is that if you determine state officers need more out of the starting gate, you can actually add one of these in-state experiences and stack it on top of your kickoff. Therefore, your initial event would be quite a bit longer than the 3-day experience that is your kickoff. However, that would then only give you 1 more in-state experience to use later on in the year. And so this allows for some customization from state to state, depending on the state's training needs. With that, content may be divided and scheduled as needed throughout the year. So if there are certain skill sets that your officers won't use until the 3rd or 4th quarter of their state officer year, let's put those training experiences there rather than front-loading them with the training at the beginning of their year and assuming and hoping that state officers retain that material all year long. We are implementing a minimum of 8 hours of content per experience. And the reason for this is that some states choose to have these experiences in very rural, remote locations pretty far from any major airport. That obviously increased the travel cost on our end as we look to cover those costs associated with this conference. And so from that end, we don't want to necessarily be paying almost $1,000 to fly a facilitator out to a remote rural location just to facilitate 2 hours worth of content, drive back to the airport, and hop on a plane back home. We'd like them to spend a full day's worth of content facilitation in your state every time they come out. And so we thank you for your patience and also your flexibility and understanding in helping us make sure that we make the most out of our resources. These InState experiences, again, are meant to be intimate, personal, and really allow the opportunity for some pretty cool coaching. And so again, we've got a ratio of 1 facilitator to 1 team here. The intent is that your facilitator should be able to coach your state officers on some of the technical skills that they'll acquire during the InState experience. For example, focus areas for InState experiences include conversation skills, team dynamics, public speaking, effective workshops, and communication tools. I'd like to make a specific note on 2 of these focus areas that are a little bit atypical. The first one is going to be team dynamics. The March 2016 work group was pretty adamant that team dynamics needs to look a little bit different in this continuum model than it does in the me, we, do, serve model. Currently, team dynamics at NLCSO is meant to help form the team, bringing them together, building community, and building some of those initial qualities that need to exist in a team setting in order for the team to be successful. However, in this new model, team dynamics really focuses on that next level of teamwork and team development, in that we want to look at, once a team has had their first major fight, they've really stormed for the first time, how do we then find a level ground where state officers can rebound from that, begin to trust in their teammates again, and move on and become productive as a team? And so for that reason, we're encouraging that team dynamics not happen within a team's first 90 days. And so that one should at least happen 3 months out after convention. The reason for that is at that point, your state officer team will have had an opportunity to come together and form, as well as hopefully experience some friction and pain, and will be more receptive to ideas on how to move on. We don't want to hit the team when they're in that honeymoon phase. The other focus area I'd like to spend some time unpacking here with InState experiences is communication tools. If you were to look at the measures of success around communication tools, you'll know that most of them support the development of public speeches and effective workshops. And so what we did was, rather than letting communication tools be its own session, we embedded those skills and those measures of success into the pre-existing sessions on public speaking and effective workshops. So you're not going to see a specific session dedicated to communication tools. We've rolled those skills and those measures of success into the public speaking and effective workshop sessions because they are so dynamically linked. The DC conference, as Austin mentioned, is a unique opportunity now for all state officers to come to Washington, D.C. and learn the skills needed to advocate on behalf of FFA. It's a synchronized experience in late July, likely the final week, similar to when SPC is now, and the focus will continue to be on advocacy. However, we do want all state officers there, but knowing that we're also going to be tackling some pre-convention work with the National FFA delegate process, we recognize the need via the National FFA Constitution to identify 2 delegates from every state that will serve as leadership delegates. And those leadership delegates will have some delegate business to attend to during this DC conference in late July. So we're going to ask 2 officers from every state to stay for about an extra day and a half on top of that DC experience and switch gears from talking about advocacy to thinking about the delegate process. That entire experience will be facilitated by the National FFA officer team, similar to as it is now. We're also heavily exploring the possibility of a professional development track for state staff. As we begin to move away from the model of NLCSO, where states come together, we recognize two things. One, that state staff had some really positive experiences at NLCSO, sharing ideas with one another. And so we want to foster that same sense of professional development and sharing best practices in the DC experience. And so we look forward to continuing to explore the possibility of offering that state staff track. Additionally, we know that state officers also benefit from some of that regional networking that happens at NLCSO. And so we expect that while there will be some large group facilitated sessions during this DC experience, there may be some regional breakouts as well that foster that same discussion among neighboring states. Focus areas for this experience will include advocating for agriculture and FFA and clear and relevant messaging. We know that there's two skills that are essential not just to 104 state officers, as we've been delivering this program for decades, but really opening that up to all 375 state officers. Now with that, we do expect that resources will be scarce at the state level, and it may not be possible, especially in the initial years of this new program, to send your entire state officer team. With that, know that this is not a all or nothing conference. If your resources limit you to only sending the 2 students that you've previously been able to send, and maybe not adding any additional students to the experience for a few years, know that we certainly understand that, and we welcome those 2 students with open arms. Let's talk a little bit about primers and boosters. These will precede, and follow the kickoff event, the InState Experiences, and the DC conference. Primers come before the initial experience, and boosters follow the experience. They're intended to lay a foundation for face-to-face experiences and build a habit of ongoing lifelong learning among state officers. We want to make sure that the content that they learn in month 1 of their year is followed up on and reinforced throughout the year so that it doesn't seem like a flavor of the week. Experiences may be self-guided or team-guided, but no matter what, they're meant to be used for individual assessment and reflection, for students to be able to really reflect on their own experience at the kickoff, in the InState Experiences, and at the DC conference. We'll deliver these online through that learning management system, but we'll do so in various forms. Austin mentioned that this is including but not limited to videos, assessments, e-learning modules, instructor-led web trainings, or independent readings. As we think about boosters, they'll traditionally be delivered online, but National FFA Convention and Expo gives an opportunity for booster sessions to be held face-to-face in conjunction with that event. We'll be scheduling these around delegate commitments. We know that the primary responsibility of state officers, most state officers at convention, tends to be serving the organization through the National FFA delegate process, and so our intent is not to force a state officer to choose between their delegate commitments and these convention elective sessions. However, we do know that as state staff, you often have time where you're engaged in NASAE meetings, and the students are left without a clear purpose. So this is a great opportunity to reinforce the content that they've learned up to this point in their year of service and have these face-to-face booster sessions. Participation will, of course, be free of charge, and it will be encouraged of all state officers but not required. We know that you have other obligations as to your officers at National Convention. We have state officers who compete in CDEs, proficiency award areas, or are competing in the National FFA Agri-Science Fair. And so we don't want to take away from those competitive commitments either. We also know that some state associations, particularly those who are our largest membership states, have delegates who are not state officers. And while these elective experiences will be exclusive for state officers because they build on the training that your state officers would have received earlier that year, we don't want to leave your delegates out in the cold. So a separate programming track will be available for those delegates who are not state officers. Finally, that brings us to the Capstone Experience. This is meant to equip officers to transfer skills learned in an FFA context to leadership context outside of FFA. Essentially, it's taking the skills and abilities that your state officers have learned and helping them target those towards other contexts, such as being a leader on campus, being a leader in their career, or within their local community. As the name Capstone Experience implies, it brings together the culmination of the student's continuum training. So it really takes into account their experiences as early as the kickoff, and that were reinforced all year through primers, boosters, InState Experiences, DC Experiences, and convention electives. Our staff is engaging with the National FFA Alumni Association and corporate sponsors to determine how to make this a total picture experience. We want your state officers to give back to the organization through the National FFA Alumni Association, and with the perks that that association allows, we want them to take advantage of their FFA Associate Alumni membership. Additionally, throughout a state officer's year of service, corporate sponsors have invested in them through the rest of these programs, and so we want an opportunity for those sponsors to get a return on their investment, as they see many of our state officers as future customers or employees of their organization. And so this is a great opportunity now that state officers have wrapped up their year of service and are looking towards hopefully entering the career of agriculture, to show them some job opportunities and internships that exist within the industry. Now, since this is the farthest experience from present day, there's still ample opportunity to shape the delivery of this experience. We have not yet solidified to what extent this experience will be delivered. For example, there could be an opportunity where you may start the development in your state of the Capstone Experience prior to the students retiring. Maybe you lead your state officers at a state officer meeting through some sort of reflective experience that could potentially carry on to one of the Alumni Association's regional development conferences, where your now retired state officers could travel there and build on that training. Finally, there's the potential that they could come back to National Convention after retiring as a state officer. Many of them will come back anyway to receive their American degree, but give them an opportunity to network with sponsors and fellow past state officers at National Convention. All of that is very much on the table, and we look forward to engaging many of you as state staff and helping us determine what a viable delivery model for the Capstone Experience could look like. We've thrown a lot at you so far in this presentation, and know that this is only a 30,000-foot overview of the new model and the steps that got us here at present day. There is a full revision report available to you online. Simply log into ffa.org and then click on your state staff dashboard. You'll see in the blue box that says resources, halfway down that list is a link for state officer management. That will open up a series of red accordion boxes, and when you click on the bottom accordion box for state officer management, you'll find an entire cadre of resources that are available to you in regards to the revision. One of them is this full revision report. Another resource available to you under that accordion tab is a file called Prototyping Materials. Downloading that zip file will give you access to some resources that will help you plan out what a year of state officer development could look like in your state. We're asking every state association to prototype for their 2018-19 state officers. You can download that zip file, explore the contents of that folder, and then click on a link for a prototyping presentation, which will guide you through that prototype process. You'll use that video in conjunction with those materials in the zip file to build that training calendar for 2018-2019. Later on this year, in 2017, we'll reach out to state associations and collect their prototypes. The reason for that is we need to know the date of your experiences for the upcoming conference season so that we can hire and train our facilitators that will be sent to your state associations. And so more on that will be coming in 2017, and of course our staff is happy to guide you through that prototyping process. It's really not as difficult as it may sound. Again, you'll find those materials on FFA.org on your state staff page under the State Officer Management Accordion tab. While you're prototyping and experiencing our traditional programs, Blastoff, NLCSO, and SPC in 2017, we're hard at work behind the scenes developing and piloting new curriculum. So Vivaic has been charged with designing curriculum that meets the 11 focus areas while remaining true to the recommended framework of that Phase 5 work group that met in March 2016. Our staff will begin piloting curricula in 4 states in 2017-2018 in lieu of Blastoff and NLCSO. Vivaic has been following an aggressive design schedule. They delivered the first bit of curriculum, or what we call the beta round of curriculum, for the Kickoff and InState Experiences to us this past December. They're now going to turn their focus onto the DC experience. Followed by that, they'll tackle the convention electives, and then ultimately the Capstone, which they'll deliver to us in October 2018. In the meanwhile, we're piloting that new curriculum for Kickoff and in-state electives in Maryland, Missouri, Nebraska, and Texas this coming year. So the officers in those states will not receive Blastoff or NLCSO. Instead, they'll experience the new program curricula, giving us feedback that will help us tweak it for full implementation. Speaking of full implementation, that is Phase 7. It's the final phase of this process. It will begin in 2018 with your 2018-19 state officers. This is where Vivaic will use the results of the pilot experience to deliver what we're calling a gold version of curriculum to National FFA staff. We'll then use that gold version of curriculum to deliver the entire new Continuum model to your newly elected state officers following your 2018 state convention. Those 18-19 state officers will begin their Continuum experience with the kickoff event following their election, and will conclude with the Capstone experience in conjunction with their 2019 retirement from state office. So again, that's kind of our implementation timeline. We look forward to delivering this in its full form in 2018-19. A lot of work is happening behind the scenes as we continue delivering current programs and also preparing to deliver these new programs. Know that our staff will be taking on a consultant-type role where we'll help you build those training calendars for your new Continuum experience over the next few months. Throughout that time, we'll be working closely with you, but would encourage you to explore the resources available to you regarding this new curriculum on the state staff homepage. And if you have any questions that you can't resolve on your own reading or your own accord, please do feel free to contact our team, as we want to be able to help you transition into this new process. Know that the new Continuum model is exciting for all of us, but it is also new for all of us. And so we're happy to do whatever we can in assisting you with a smooth transition into this model. With that, this brings this recording to a close. Keep on the lookout for some Q&A sessions that our staff will be hosting to answer any outlying questions that you may have, and certainly reach out to us at stateofficers@ffa.org with any questions that can help you in this transition. Thanks so much for joining this recording, and we're excited to share in this exciting process with you.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.